I can't even imagine. Have you heard those words and thought to yourself, neither can I? But it happened. You lived it. But most importantly, you survived it. We hear you, we see you, and we're here to talk about it. We're two moms, lifelong best friends, and we've both experienced traumatic, life-altering events involving our children. Welcome to episode 10 of I Can't Even Imagine. I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Victoria.
And today we are celebrating a little milestone. It is episode 10.
Yay, our 10th one.
I'm so proud of us.
Me too. Oh, yeah. So my youngest is in a after-school club called Book Battle. And my middle daughter was in it last year. And they assigned 2 books per month. And then at the end of that month, or end of the 30-day period, they meet up and play a game, and whoever earns the most points at the end of this semester or the year, I'm not sure, I don't remember how it works, the book battle teacher picks 12 students to then represent the school at the book battle at the official office. Mm-hmm. And my middle daughter made it into book battle, the actual battle, last year. She's very proud of it. She has her t-shirt. She still wears it. And so my youngest daughter's in book battle this year, and she was supposed to read 2 books, but then the hurricane happened. She did read those 2 books, but then the meeting got canceled, and we've just been sitting on it. We have not even thought about book battle books. I can't even believe it's been a month since the hurricane. Mm-hmm. And Sunday night or Sunday afternoon at 3 o'clock, I get a text. Can't wait to see everybody at book battle tomorrow.
Every mother with a child in school's worst nightmare.
I was like, oh shit. And I went to her and I said, hey, so you got book battle books due tomorrow because your after school program. And she starts crying because that's how she rolls. And I was like, hey, we can fix this. Don't worry. Let me look them up on the website or the library website, see if we can get like the audio version. Of course, place a hold. I went on Hoopla. They're too new. They don't have them on Hoopla. So I bought them on Audible. She's still crying.
You're like, Mom's a professional procrastinator. We've got this.
That's exactly what I said. I said, listen, you're a Rains kid. We know how to procrastinate, and we do it well. We thrive under pressure.
Yep.
You come from this brood. Get it together, shake it off, and let's get this done. So we downloaded them, and she had, it was 3 o'clock. We had to go to Target. We got home at 5, and I said, I'll let you go to bed late tonight. You got, 4.5 hours to read. The first book was 3 hours and 11 minutes, and the second book was 1 hour and 48 minutes. But we sped them up. So they're 1.5 or 1.2. They weren't total chipmunk, but they were getting there. And she was able to get the first book was done and the second book was almost done by the time she went to bed. And then I woke her up a little bit early. She finished the book. And then on the way to school, I asked Chad, I need 10 multiple choice questions for each book, and I tested her on the books on the way to school.
That part I think was genius.
Oh yeah.
That was genius.
Oh yeah.
How did she do?
I picked her up and I said, how'd it go? Did you crush it and knock everybody out with your knowledge? She's like, no, I didn't know anything.
Oh no. No, I thought she was going to crush it.
Because she just read them, right? Fresh in her mind.
Yeah.
Nope. So I think we came to the conclusion that if she's going to do audio, which makes it a lot faster, she needs the physical book too to follow along. Because she was doing a lot of art on her iPad while she's listening.
Yeah, kind of maybe tuning it out a bit.
That's exactly what happened. She was tuning it out. And we caught Chad in a lie.
Uh-oh.
Yep. One of the questions said something about, what does the girl draw most in her comics? What animal? And it was cat, bird, dog, or bunny. And there's a dog on the cover. And she's like, she said, I think it's a bunny. And I was like, wrong. Chad says it's a cat. She's like, I don't think so. And so I'm like, let's ask. And I said, hey, Chad, I need you to clarify question number 6 and tell me what the answer is. Because it's not a cat. And he's like, oh, sorry about that. Thanks for catching it. It's a bunny.
What the hell, Chad?
It's what I said, Chad. The fuck?
What else you lying about?
I know. That's what I was wondering. I'm like, did I give her all this wrong information? And quizzed her and then sent her into school. Good luck, champ. And then she fails the quizzes or like the battle between the little kids in class.
I
don't
am
know.
going to remember this little trick for if this ever happens to me, though, with my kids. It's a good idea. Put that in your little back pocket.
Yeah, because I mean, you can always just double down and say, hey, double check those answers before you give them to your kids.
Yeah.
Chad's useful sometimes.
Yeah. It's a tool.
Yeah.
You don't rely on it.
God, no. Shut up.
All right. So, how was your little skin doctor appointment? Tell us about that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, God. I had a dermatology appointment this morning, my very first ever. 39 years old. I've never had a full body check. Neither have you. Didn't feel so alone. In fact, I felt seen by you.
Because I've never had.
Yeah, because everybody else like, what? What?
I mean, no, I have been. I haven't had full body check, but I've been to a dermatologist for that thing on my neck that developed in pregnancy. Right. Pregnancy does really weird things.
Sure does.
Yeah, I had that removed. Next pregnancy, it came back, so I just left it there. They said it was benign anyway.
Right.
They said it was a benign vascular cyst. So it's like, it just looks like a little like red mole.
Right.
It's just a little bubble that's filled with blood. I thought it was like when I first saw it, I thought it was like a blood blister. And I was like, oh, I remember pinching myself there. Like, what the hell is that? Like,
it's on your collarbone.
It's on my collarbone. It's a really weird spot. And like an idiot, I tried to pop it and it would not stop bleeding. It was like as if I had sliced myself. It was just dripping down my neck with blood and this little tiny little thing. And I'm like, yeah, that's not normal. And then every time if I did that again, because I did it a few times thinking, somehow I was going to get rid of it. I don't know what my thought process was there. Not very smart, clearly. And every time I would pop it or scratch at it or whatever, and it opened and it would bleed, every time it would heal, it got bigger. And it got to a point where it was like the size of it was like a fat dime. It was like this big and it like stuck out. It was huge.
Yeah.
And I just kept it covered with a Band-Aid because I was so embarrassed by it.
Yep.
And then I got it removed. And then when they removed it, they said everything was fine. It was benign, not to worry about it. But then my next pregnancy, it came back with this little tiny spot. And I was like, oh, I know what that is. I'm just going to leave it there.
Do not touch it because then it's going to grow.
Do not touch it. So tell me about your experience.
Yeah, so I have this little like crusty spot on my cheekbone. And I don't notice it until I put any kind of foundation on. And I haven't worn foundation since our photo shoot. And that's when I really started to notice it. And I'm like, I thought maybe at first I scratched myself or something and it just hasn't healed up.
It's like it would be like cakey in that spot, like rough, and we kind of getting like.
And when Halloween, for my 80s costume, or my white trash costume, I used lipstick for my blush because I don't have that dark of blush. Right. So I had to use lipstick and it was so dark in that spot. Like it was like a bruise. It was like this filled in.
Like absorbed it.
It did. And it was almost like a crevice and it just wouldn't go away. It took forever to get it out too. I had to use like a makeup wipe and really scrub it. Yeah. So anyways, I had my dermatology appointment this morning and he said that it's just aging skin. It's just an age spot and they can get really like dry. And he's like, it's just going to get worse over time. It's damaged skin. Yeah. And he said the left side of your face is always, he's like, you see him more often on the left side of the face because that's the side you're driving on.
Oh, interesting.
I was like, that makes sense. So anyways, he offered to freeze it and he used it looked like a blowtorch. It was like dry ice or something. And so now right now, I'm sitting here. I can see it underneath my eye. It's like I've got a big swollen lump out of my eye, and it stings. Yeah, and it hurts. But the full body check, since you've never had one, let me walk you through the process.
Yes, please. And you've already from the get-go, you told me you had a male doctor, so I'm like, oh, this is going to get good.
Well, they asked me male or female. I was like, who cares?
Right.
It was checking my arms, like big deal. I just wasn't prepared.
You got naked?
No, they told you to keep your undies on.
Okay.
And they said bra is optional. But today I'm wearing my Halloween bra, which is bright pink and it's see-through so you can see my nips. And I'm like, that if it's a male doctor and I'm over here showing up in this literal hot pink bra, I'm just going to go ahead and take that off. Just looks weird and it's see-through. What are you doing? No. So I took my bra off and you have to wear that paper gown with the slit in the back. So essentially he's like, oh, I'll just start with your back and then we'll work our way down, have you turn around and work you top to bottom, then your face and scalp are last. That's fine. And as he's asking me about if I grew up here. And we're in the middle of this conversation And he's like pulling down my underwear. And I'm like, oh God, okay, that's where we're going. He's like, okay, please spread your cheeks. I was like, what? Like, I didn't prepare for this. Like, I got busy last night and like legit did not shower.
Oh no.
Like today I don't like work, or I'm only seeing you.
Right.
I'm not doing anything fancy. So
Right.
I was doing my own funk.
There you go.
And whatever. Well, he's got a magnifying glass.
Oh, and you're spreading your cheeks.
In my cheeks.
Oh no.
And so, okay, that was it. Now turn around, and he's checking my toes, between my toes, and,
Ew.
you know, not my legs, and nothing with the vag, thank God.
Ugh.
And then he gets to my chest, and he's like, okay, now lift your boobs. Lift your boobs. And they need to be lifted. I get that. That doesn't hurt any less to hear that.
Right.
Like, I'm a mother with 4 kids that have 4 kids gnawing on my boobs for around 9 years total.
Mm-hmm.
Of course I'm going to have to lift them. But
And you're a big-chested girl, too.
yeah,
Not just because you have breastfed. Like, your boobs still look great.
my boobs do look rather good. But the fact is, when you hear somebody say,
Okay, now lift your boobs.
lift your boob, it just made me feel so old.
It's bad enough you're at a dermatology office.
Yeah. With a guy on his knees. Because he's at to look under.
Uh-huh.
Lift your boobs.
You're in such a vulnerable position.
It was just so, and then his nurse is just kind of sitting in the corner watching, and I'm like, now there's 2 people staring at me lifting my boobs, spreading my crack too, with her behind me.
Oh, no.
I have to say to myself, most people who go to the dermatologist are like elderly,
Oh, yeah.
and they can't clean themselves well.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to imagine that I'm not the only one that didn't shower last night.
Correct.
That's all I'm saying.
You also got people who, like, probably can't physically wipe themselves
Right.
well and probably have, like, streaks up their crack. You imagine that?
Yes.
Or being down low and examining that and getting, like, a whiff.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Gross.
So I'm probably like,
They're probably like, this
Top
girl's like
notch.
a nice specimen.
yeah, top notch in comparison.
Yes.
To what
Does it
I'm sure they've seen.
Feel a little better about yourself?
A little bit. Until he said, lift your boobs.
I think lift your boobs isn't nearly as bad as spread your cheeks. Oh, God.
Yeah, but everybody has cheeks.
I know.
Oh, well.
Your boobs are awesome. You're good. Don't worry. Today in the studio, we are joined by Serra. Serra is a clinical data specialist and mother of 2, and she's here to tell us the story about her heart warrior 7-month-old. Welcome, Serra.
Hi, thank you.
Thank you for coming all the way into the studio today.
Of course.
We love doing in-person interviews.
Prefer it
over doing the virtual stuff. So it's very lovely to have you here. All right. So you have a story about your beautiful 7-month-old. So why don't you go ahead and just get started?
My name is Sarah. I am a wife and mother of 2. I have a 3-year-old and a 7-month-old, Astrid. She is one of the 1 out of every 100 births that was affected by congenital heart defects. She is also one of the 2 out of every 1,000 births that's affected by a critical congenital heart defect. Her heart defect is called truncus arteriosus. So in a healthy heart, the deoxygenated blood will come in from the body into the right atrium, then it will go into the right ventricle, through the pulmonary arteries into the lungs, then it will come back in through the pulmonary veins into the left atrium, into the left ventricle, and out to the rest of the body through the aorta with oxygen-rich blood. With Astrid's defect, the aorta and the pulmonary arteries never separated during fetal development. So you have a lot of mixing of oxygen-rich blood and blood that doesn't have oxygen in it that's going out toward the rest of the body. This causes the heart to have to work harder, and it causes overcirculation in the lungs. So it can quickly lead to pulmonary hypertension, heart failure. So it's something that has to be dealt with surgically within the first week of life. So Astrid had to have surgery when she was 7 days old, And we found out that we were expecting this journey about halfway through my pregnancy.
Yeah, tell us about that, how this got discovered and what your reaction to that was.
So I found out really early on that I was pregnant just because I felt car sick. Every time we got into the car, I actually hadn't started getting my period back since my last pregnancy because I was breastfeeding still.
Mm-hmm. That happened to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of my kids, I never had gotten my period back.
I was sitting every time we got into the car, I would start feeling sick. So I was like, yeah, there's no way. But I decided to take a test, and lo and behold, 2 pink lines.
Yeah, there she is.
So I ended up finding out really early. I kind of had suspicions of when ovulation happened, but because of the wait list that's been happening with OB because it's been so busy, lots of babies being born in our area, I wasn't able to get in until 12 weeks.
Right. That's pretty typical though, right? Most of the time they don't even really want to see you until you're at least like the 10 to 12 week mark. Is that right?
8 weeks is
8
when
weeks, okay.
is like the earliest they'll see you because
Okay.
that's when they really get a good look at the heartbeat.
Right. Okay.
But 12 weeks is when we got in, and everything was normal in the first ultrasound as far as we could tell. Now, I have my own medical stuff. I have cystic fibrosis. So I'm already high risk and go to maternal fetal medicine. I did with my first 2. So I had my first anatomy scan at 17 weeks. And I went in. I actually went to that appointment by myself. My husband wasn't able to go with me because of work. But, I mean, we weren't expecting anything.
Right.
The blood work and all of the genetic screenings, the alpha-fetoprotein test, all of that had come back normal.
Is that the one where they test for Down syndrome? Is that the one that they...
That's the NIPT,
Okay.
and that one does Down syndrome and other chromosomal anomalies, including 22q, which Astrid doesn't have, but that is a diagnosis that's commonly associated with truncus arteriosus.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it's a screening, not a diagnostic test, but it was low risk.
Right.
The alpha-fetoprotein is a screening for neural tube defects. So like spina bifida and things like that. So all of that had come back negative, and we weren't expecting anything. We started the ultrasound, got to look at her head, her face, her cute little profile, and then the sonographer kind of paused over her heart. And I kind of watched her face. I got that feeling, and I said, "What are you seeing?" She said, no worries. I'm just being quiet and make sure I get good pictures of the heart. But I could kind of see the little fluttering. I'm not a sonographer. I don't really know what I'm looking at, but I knew something was a little bit different. So I said, well, is there a VSD? And she looked at me and she said, you work in the field? I said, kind of.
Yeah.
Not really, but kind of. And she said, okay, so I believe your daughter has a complex lesion on her heart. I see an overriding aorta, and then, your ears kind of start ringing. It starts to kind of fade out. But she said that the doctor was going to come in, but she was thinking she saw either transposition of the great arteries, double outlet right ventricle, or truncus arteriosus. The doctor came in and said the same thing, said that we would be referred to fetal cardiology. And that's where we would get the official diagnosis. I had to wait, I think, 3 weeks before the fetal cardiology appointment, which was rough. We went in for a fetal echo, which is a very detailed ultrasound of the baby's heart. And that sonographer didn't say anything.
Yeah.
I said, can you say anything? And she said, no. You'll have to wait until you can see the doctor.
Yeah.
We went in, and he confirmed the diagnosis of truncus arteriosus, said that we would have to find a congenital heart program and would have to deliver at a different hospital because we don't have those kinds of services at our local children's hospital.
Right.
Processing that was a lot. I went through that initial period of grief where I started to wonder if I was never going to be able to bring her home. Also went straight to the Facebook groups. So the congenital heart group on Facebook and a truncus arteriosus Facebook group. And it did seem kind of mixed. Like there were some really great outcomes, and there were some that, lost their baby pretty early on. So I just remember feeling like despair. Was really depressed for a few weeks, and I didn't want to buy anything for a while.
Yeah.
Like for the for your for the new baby.
It took a lot to even go and buy that first outfit.
Yeah.
But
You said you were about 20 weeks, right? When you
Yeah.
found out. And you had another little one at home to take care of.
Yes, and my other little one has autism spectrum disorder. So I was already a little worried about, oh my gosh, how am I going to be away from him for 2 nights while
Right.
I'm in the hospital?
Right.
And this just threw a whole wrench in that. So I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I don't know that I am strong enough to get through this. I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah. Those are all normal. I mean, all those, we talk a lot about, like intrusive thoughts, especially when you get a diagnosis like that, your mind just goes to crazy places, like all the what if.
Yep.
Then, eventually you pull up your big girl panties and
You do the
all
thing.
you can do is move forward.
That's
and,
it.
and you do the thing. And from what I understand, when we spoke previously, your labor and delivery went pretty well, right?
Oh, yeah. If pregnancy was as easy as my births were, then I'd probably do it a bunch more times. But it's everything else that surrounds it.
That's an interesting thing to say, because I feel like a majority of women say the opposite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my pregnancies weren't horrible as far as other people's stories. Like I had nausea, but I wasn't throwing up all the time. Where my struggles come in is my body just forgets how to hold on to electrolytes while I'm pregnant.
Okay.
So my magnesium and potassium gets to be critically low.
Interesting. Does that have anything to do with your cystic fibrosis?
It does. It's something called secondary pseudo-Barter syndrome.
Okay.
So it's just a lot of renal dumping of the potassium and the magnesium and calcium.
Does that only happen while you're pregnant, or does that happen all the time?
It only happens while I'm pregnant.
Interesting.
It's kind of like people get gestational diabetes where they're not diabetic in normal life. Maybe something. I mean, I know it's attached to your cystic fibrosis, but I feel like maybe it's just one of those freak things because your body is in such a different state when you're pregnant.
The nephrologist explained it as it being the hemodilution, just because your blood volume increases so much.
Yeah.
And then your vessels are dilated as well. So
And I would also think that too, with your baby developing, your body is giving your child all
Everything.
everything that it can pull from you. I mean, some women,
Yes.
their teeth fall apart while they're pregnant because it's pulling the calcium from their teeth.
yeah. So
We take a lot, don't we? As women, we take
Yeah.
a lot of damage to populate the earth. Y'all are welcome.
You're welcome. Yes. Amen. Things that we do
I know.
for you.
And then the
people.
aftermath of everything, just the wear and tear.
definitely deserve prizes or
Yes,
something.
we do.
Push presents should be normalized.
Agree.
That's funny.
But
Can I ask a quick question about cystic fibrosis? I do not know anything about it. I've heard the term a lot. So can you tell me about that and what does that mean for you?
yes, cystic fibrosis is a recessive hereditary illness. It's screened for on the newborn screenings now, but it causes the sodium chloride channels in the cells to not function properly, and that causes a buildup of thicker secretions, mucus in the lungs, pancreas, digestive system.
Okay.
So it causes GI issues, and it also causes a lot of respiratory issues.
Okay.
Living with that, what do you have to do? Do you take meds? Would you?
Yes.
Okay.
I take a newer medication called Trikafta. It is a CFTR modulator drug. It's a newer class of drugs, pretty expensive. So thank God for good insurance.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, I would have to do breathing treatments twice a day on a normal basis, more so if I was sick. I've had IV antibiotics before, but I am lucky and have avoided hospital admission my entire life for
That's
it.
awesome.
That's
So-
really good. And then throughout your pregnancy, were you able to stick on that same medication? Was that safe to take during pregnancy?
Yes. It's
That's
actually
good.
kind of cool. A little sidebar. They've recently started treating moms that don't have CF with it, but have an in utero diagnosis for their child of having CF because it has therapeutic properties. It does cross the placenta, but that was discovered after I delivered my last baby. So less than 7 months ago, they figured that out.
Wow.
So do any of your children have CF since it's a recessive trait?
No.
Okay.
My husband doesn't carry the trait. We had him tested.
So you'd both have to carry the trait so both of your parents carried it, therefore you would have it.
So I have 2 copies of the gene, and then my husband has 0.
Okay.
But my mom and my dad both had 1 copy of the gene.
Got it. Okay.
Therefore, they're not sick with it and don't have any of the traits of it, like physically, but they were able to pass it on to me and then 2 of my brothers.
I was going to ask, is it every kid that they would have would have it, or it's just 50-50 shot that any kid that they have would get CF?
No, some of my siblings are just carriers, but everybody has at least 1 copy of the gene. I was just one of the unlucky ones that got both.
Right. Okay. You said some of my siblings, yet you and 2 brothers have it. How many siblings do you have?
I'm the oldest of 8 kids.
Oh my God.
Whoa.
Big family, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because when you said some, I'm thinking there's more than 4.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow. You're the oldest.
Yes.
Are you the most responsible?
Yeah.
Okay.
How old
I
is the
figured.
youngest?
The youngest is, she's 9.
And these are full-blooded siblings.
The 4 oldest are my mom and biological dad, and the 4 youngest are my mom and my stepdad.
Okay. Okay.
There's some half siblings.
So
And
your
one
mom
of
has had 8 children.
Yes.
Whoa.
Dang.
No
Yeah.
twins.
Go mama.
Yeah, for sure.
Super mom.
She
for
had
sure.
twins too?
No twins.
No twins.
No multiples. So
That is, I said to you when you first got here how I'm having baby fever, but my uterus is tired. Your mom's uterus is exhausted.
yeah, she decided we're done after that. Yeah.
Was there a religious aspect to her, or does she just really likes children?
No, she just really likes kids.
That's awesome.
I
Either way, it's awesome.
I
just think it's
admire.
cool.
I really do. I'm maxed out at 3.
Yeah.
I really admire people that have big families. I think it's super cool. It's not for me, but I wish that I loved children more than I do.
I love your honesty.
That sounds so terrible coming out of
No,
my
it
mouth.
doesn't.
I love my kids, but they're very extroverted. They're not introverted. They are a lot. So when people have I don't know how they afford it, number one.
Yeah.
Have houses full of children. But if you can afford it, and if you have, some families, I actually know somebody who has 10. At this point, she may have 11. I photographed her while she was pregnant with her 10th. And they literally had one of those transportation vans for their family. And I'm
believe it.
And it was a nice one too. It was like a Mercedes. It was those really big
I just
fancy
want to know
ones.
what her husband does for a
That's
living.
what I'm saying, because she doesn't work.
Right. Right. And they have a farm. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
How?
I don't know. If you are listening and you're one of these people, please write to us. We want to know how you guys do it, because
Yes.
we respect the crap out of you and just are curious. How do you do it?
Yeah.
Well, it's all admiration. I remember my mom always having everything set out perfectly in the morning. We'd all have breakfast and all have our clothes laid out when we were, going to school and everything. And gosh, I struggle to get 2 babies out the door.
I'm saying, I think that the more kids you have, the more organized you have to, the more organized you have to be, because otherwise it's just going to be sheer chaos. But the less the kids you have, the less, I guess, responsible and organized you have to be. Because in my life, I have 4 kids. That's far less than 10. And I am not organized. I'm like, breakfast, find something, let's go.
Yeah.
There's no
granola
making.
bars in the pantry. Grab yourself a Go-Gurt. Let's go.
Sometimes I'm brushing my hair when I get to work. Isn't that bad?
Right. Right. Sometimes she shows up here on a Tuesday to interview and hasn't even brushed her teeth yet.
And that was once. Thank you very much.
We had breakfast last week and you hadn't brushed your teeth yet.
Once.
No, that was twice. It's twice now.
No.
I offered you my toothbrush.
Oh,
Okay, so this is twice.
You're right.
That's how you guys know you're good friends.
She's so mean
I haven't
to me.
used it. I bought it. It was somewhere. I think I bought it and I'm like, I'm just going to put this in the office just in case I ever need it. And I didn't. She did, but she never used it. So it's still fresh and clean. I would never offer some random person my toothbrush. Or you. I'm sorry. I wouldn't use it.
No.
You used to chew my gum though.
I did. We were young and stupid.
You used to chew my gum too.
Okay, well,
Okay.
we were young and stupid. That is not a recommendation. Do not share
Do
gum
not
with
share
people.
your gum. Disgusting.
So gross.
We were teenagers.
Yes, we
Come
were.
on. Teenagers are stupid.
So dumb. Okay, sorry.
Anyways, back on track, people.
This is all staying in.
Oh, is it?
It has to. It's hilarious.
I'm going to be getting emails. You're disgusting.
Yeah.
You don't brush your teeth.
No, you have 3 kids and you have to run out the door with them. Dude, trust me, I get it. If I didn't wake up at 5 a.m., I would never get anything done for me.
Yeah.
It wouldn't happen.
I can't get up at 5 a.m.
I have
6:30
to.
is pushing it. Now I have to
to.
get up at 6:30 because of traffic.
Yeah, I have to, man.
I get up at 5 a.m. and I still find that I'm scrambling to get out the door. I'm like,
I
I'm
am
not really
too.
sure what I'm doing wrong here.
Yeah, I am too. What time do you leave?
Around 8.
Oh, yeah, me too. No, I leave at 7. But I get up at 5. I brush my teeth, wash my face, put my contacts in. But I think that is why I'm so successful at keeping my teeth brushed all the time. It's because I have to wear my contacts. If I don't have my contacts in, then I hate my glasses. So, I'm here. I'm right next to the sink. And I've been doing that since I was 12 with contacts. So I feel like it's just part of my routine. I have to,
Yeah.
Sorry. Anyways, now we're really back on track. That will probably all get cut out because that was a ridiculous sidebar.
No, you'll leave the part in about me not brushing my teeth. 'cause
No,
you're
that
a
part I'm
dick.
definitely leaving in, but
See?
the rest of it is
You're a
ridiculous.
dick.
I know. Love you.
All right. So how did we even get to this point? We were talking. What were we
Chaos.
talking about?
10 kids, cystic fibrosis.
Should we talk about
recessive
this?
traits.
That's right. We were talking about the traits and the siblings.
Yep.
Okay. So yeah, your mom's a badass.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed. Agreed.
I hope she listens to this.
I'm sure she will. Hi, Mom.
Hi, Mom.
So I think we were talking about my births, too.
Yes. Yes.
So with my first, I went in for a 39-week induction. Again, was followed by maternal fetal medicine, so it was a recommendation, and I was done with it anyways. I was ready.
Mm-hmm.
So went in about 6 hours after I got off work the night before. And when you go in for an induction, they check you when you get there to see like how they're going to start, if they're going to start with cervical ripening or if they're just going to jump right into Pitocin. And they put me on the monitor and asked, "Oh, you're not feeling that?" I said, "Feeling what?" I said, "You're contracting 2 minutes apart." Then they checked me and I was 6 centimeters dilated. So
That's the easiest labor. Oh,
Yeah.
my God.
then they started Pitocin.
And that was your first?
That was my first,
What
yeah.
a jerk this girl is.
I know.
Can you believe this?
I know.
I'm just kidding.
It wasn't too long. They started me on Pitocin. I quickly got the epidural.
You
Needed it
started
with-
to feel the contractions at that point?
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Pitocin, they say, oh, you'll reach that intensity anyways. But now I've done one induced and one unmedicated. And I feel like I can confidently say that Pitocin didn't make a bigger difference than they say it will.
It makes a huge difference. I had Pitocin with my son. I was planning on a birth center birth. I think I was just so excited that I was, my water broke on a chair in the middle of Bob Evans.
That's a good story.
Yeah. And I was just so excited. Like you see on TV, water breaks, baby's coming now. So
Yeah.
I'm expecting baby to be coming now. And so we checked into the birth center way too early.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't even in active labor. I was not even close. I mean, I was laboring, but I don't know what I'm doing. And we were there for overnight.
Yeah, it was
I
like-
got there at 4
It was
o'clock.
30. It was over 30 hours, and then we finally ended up.
Because I think I was like 6 centimeters dilated, but I hadn't slept in 2 days because I was so
no.
excited. Well, it had
Okay.
been, so I woke up at 5 a.m. I started feeling back labor. By 8, I was like, oh, something's going on here. Then I thought my water broke at like 10 a.m., but it was just that outside sac that kind of gushed a little. And then she drove up. I lived in St. Pete at the time. She drove up. We went to lunch. Then I laughed. Water all over the floor in front of old people.
all over the chair.
All over the chair and the floor because it dribbled all over the floor.
I had to let her borrow my sweatshirt that I had to tie around her waist to waddle across the restaurant to go to the bathroom.
It was intense. But then it was like maybe at 2 or 3 or 4 o'clock, somewhere in there. I'm like, bringing my bags. We're checking in. 6:30, 7 o'clock the next night. Oof. I was at 6-7 centimeters dilated. And I was like, I'm so exhausted, you know? And so then I transferred to the hospital and they gave me Pitocin. Night and day difference of like just the experience of contractions was so bad. So then I too was like, epidural now.
Yeah, and then her
Thanks.
epidural didn't take. The first one didn't take. And I was sleep deprived because being the best friend, I'm not leaving her side. And everybody else got naps here and there. And I was like,
husband.
This is my godchild coming into the world. I had not had kids yet.
Right.
She was the first one to have kids. And I'm like, I'm going to be by your side, timing your contractions.
She's
I'm
here the whole time.
Basically your doula, for lack of a better word at the
Didn't
time.
even know that word at
Didn't
the
even
time.
know that word. And so excited, just like she was. I mean, as soon as I found out, I was like in my car, gone.
Yep.
I think I left work early. I was like, sorry, I know this is irresponsible. My best friend's in labor. Peace out. I'm leaving.
We were like 23, 24 years old.
Yeah. And so I rushed up there and was by her side. But when she got transferred to the hospital, and then they said that I remember sitting in the waiting area with her mom, and they came out and said that, and your dad was there too. And they said,
my grandma.
And they said that the epidural didn't take. I started bawling because I was like upset that I knew she was in pain, and I was upset that she was in pain.
Yeah.
And I was so sleep deprived that I was loopy. And I was really upset for her because I knew that it was already not her plan.
No, not even close.
And I was upset for her because of that too.
Yeah. And people thought I was weird because back then people are like, birth center birth, you know what?
Yeah, you were
know?
a weirdo.
I was such a weirdo. Yeah.
No, birth center births are amazing. I've had two.
Nice.
So, yeah. So yeah, the difference between
Pitocin. Yeah, let's get back on track. I'm so sorry.
The
We
difference
totally
between,
hijacked.
Yeah.
Totally hijacked your story.
No, that's okay.
The difference between the induced labor and then the natural labor. So natural labor, totally better?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I agree.
Because everything went quick with my first birth, and I know when it's not your first birth, it is likely to go a little bit faster. So I ended up going to Gainesville, to the University of Florida. We checked into Ronald McDonald at 38 weeks. I spent that entire week there, just went to appointments, got a whole bunch of lab stuff done. Again, there's more to that part, so we'll circle back.
And you were sent up there because of the upcoming surgery that inevitably was going to happen for your daughter,
Yes.
correct? So they were like, might as well, you're still pregnant, you might as well deliver up there? Was that the mindset
It was
on that?
They needed me to deliver up there. So the babies with truncus and other critical congenital heart defects are often like good until they're not. And when they're not, it spirals very quick.
Okay.
So Astrid was good up until the night before her surgery.
Okay.
And then the night before her surgery, like her lung collapsed. She was really uncomfortable.
Man.
She was going into bouts of ventricular tachycardia, so her ventricles were beating too fast. So yeah, she started tanking pretty quick, and I read her op note, and she actually had to be shocked on the table while they were
man.
Oh my gosh.
getting ready to induce anesthesia. So it goes 0 to 100 really quick.
She was such a little thing too.
Yeah, she's a little
And
bitty.
how was your backtrack just a little bit? How was your
Yeah.
delivery experience with her?
My delivery experience with her was amazing, actually. I went in to just get another ultrasound because we were up in Gainesville, and I was going to have a induction on the day that I was 39 weeks, but a lot of people were having babies. L&D was really busy, so it kept on getting pushed back because it wasn't like an emergency.
Right.
It was medically necessary, but the way that triage will go is when they bring in inductions. So it kept getting pushed back, and they wanted to see me in the office, do an ultrasound, make sure, she was still doing okay. And she was, and I mentioned to them, said, with my son, I went in for an induction, and I did not realize I was in active labor when I got there. So maybe we should just check, because at this point I was 39 weeks, 2 days. And I remember the nurse said, yeah, that's pretty uncommon, but, we'll check. And they checked and they said, oh, well, you can go to labor and delivery.
Nice.
You are contracting pretty regularly, and you're a good 5 centimeters, maybe 6.
Man.
But I learned my lesson the last time. I learned my lesson with my first, and I ate first before I went into the hospital, because with my first I was too scared. But
Yeah. I wonder why they gave you Pitocin with your first if you were already in active labor at 6 centimeters dilated. That's when like the 6 to 10 range is like the speedier,
yeah,
Yeah, why
That
did they give you
yeah.
Pitocin?
they don't.
They just did. Just as normal. Like
Yeah.
under the umbrella of normal.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I was just curious because it just doesn't sit right. Like you're already progressing so quickly with no outward sign of labor. Why are
Yeah.
we doing an intervention unnecessarily? It feels unnecessary, but that's just me. I didn't know if you wanted it. You wanted to speed it up and like let's get the show on the road.
I think I was just like, yeah, cool, that sounds fine. We'll
yeah,
just do
of course. Yeah, sure.
that. But when I went up to Gainesville, they were different, and I had been through it before, and the labor and delivery beds, if you haven't delivered a child before, they're about as soft as a park bench to sit on. They're not very comfortable. So being stuck with the epidural for my first left my butt kind of sore.
Yeah.
So I knew I was progressing this time. They checked me, sent me to labor and delivery. We made a pit stop at IHOP first.
And don't blame you.
And went in, and they were like, okay, so what do you want to do? Because you're progressing pretty well. And I said, I want to see what my body can do for
Yeah,
a little
good
bit.
on you.
And they said, okay. They're like, now we would recommend, if we're not progressing super quick, then we might talk about Pitocin. They're like, but we agree you're progressing pretty well.
On your own, I feel like Pitocin should be set aside for something that's like more emergent, like your labor stops and baby's kind of not doing so hot. Let's just do a little push of Pitocin, see if we can get it back going. I feel like that would
Yeah.
be a good time.
Right.
But somebody who's just like
Yeah.
I
doing
know.
it on their own, it just feels unnecessary.
Yeah, kind of.
Because how much are they charging your insurance company too?
That's a
Right.
good question. With Astrid, we really wanted a day shift baby because this was a planned event. She had lots of people waiting on her with the NICU, cardiology.
That makes sense why they would want to do Pitocin at this point. Then I mean,
Yeah.
I would understand that. That makes sense.
But I did not have Pitocin for her birth.
Nice.
I wanted to stay mobile as long as I could. And really, my contractions weren't that painful until they were.
Yeah.
And then it was 15 minutes and she was born.
Nice.
So,
And you didn't have an epidural with this one either?
nope.
Good on you.
Um,
Yeah, it's really about the last 15 minutes are the ones that you're just like,
Yeah.
wow, I don't know if I can do this. This is really tough. And that's when you know.
it was kind of funny. I thought I had more time because I was open to an epidural. I was like, I want to make sure that I'm like present for her first few minutes because I will get to hold her, but not for long. So I want to really be able to take this in. So I waited until I started to, get a little bit more uncomfortable. And I thought, we probably have an hour or two. It'd be a good time, giving anesthesia plenty of time to calm. And I told my nurse, I was like, we could probably go ahead and put in the call. And she said, okay. Anything else? And I was like, no. And she kind of like slowly meandered to the door, and it hit me all of a sudden. I said, wait. And she called for an OB stat. And then, it went very quickly from there.
That's so awesome.
0 to 100.
What a beautiful experience for you. That's so cool.
And with her heart defect, we were expecting her to come out a little blue and a little dusky. But she didn't. She was pink. She was screaming.
Aw.
She had high APGARs, so she
Nice.
was doing good for, what we expected, especially.
Yeah.
Do they have to wait for the baby to be a certain age before they want to do the open heart surgery?
Bigger is better.
Okay.
But the timing is kind of delicate because when a baby's a newborn, if they're term, their heart is about the size of a walnut. So you can only imagine how precise, delicate, and fragile the whole procedure can be. And, open heart surgery, they have to paralyze the heart and put the baby on bypass while they do the surgery. So
How long was the surgery?
I think it was about 8 hours.
Whoa.
Yeah.
And how were you doing while you were waiting?
Oh, I was a wreck.
I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah. She was born. I had 10, 15 minutes with her. And then the NICU said, okay, we have to take her. And they rolled her away. And then this quietness and the stillness in the room was kind of like a gut punch. It's kind of sitting there like, whoa, what now?
Yeah.
Getting wheeled up to the postpartum floor was a lot different. And I didn't hear from the NICU for a long time.
Oof, that had to be so hard.
That was tough.
They didn't want you to come in there, or you probably have to, because you just had a baby, they probably won't let you come because
Well,
you have to be okay too, right?
yeah, you have to be able to walk. And that was another bonus to not getting the epidural. Now, I did tear, so I had to wait until the stitches were done. But then I was able to get up pretty quickly. I didn't have to wait for the epidural to wear off.
Right.
And I was able to walk, though not super comfortably. It was more of a waddle after that. But
Yeah.
And they usually make you go to the bathroom and you have to
Yeah.
deliver the placenta first and all that. So they have to make sure that you're not hemorrhaging and all that kind of stuff too. So I'm sure it
Yeah.
took a little bit to make sure that you were good.
now, where I work, most of the time, they'll have the dad walk with the baby to the NICU if the dad's there. At Shands, they have an open concept NICU as opposed to our local children's hospital, which has private rooms. So they told Dad he couldn't come either. So they just walked away, with your fresh baby, which is hard. And then I waited, and I kept asking for updates. They said it would be about an hour before I could come because they had to put lines in. But they didn't call for quite a while. I called for an update. I asked them what respiratory support she was on, how she was doing. They said she's on room air, which was a surprise. I was expecting her to need like a nasal cannula or something at least. They said that her O2 sats were looking pretty good, which also wasn't expected. We were expecting them to be in the 70s, 80s range, but they were between 95 and 98, which was
great.
surprising given her particular heart defect. And then I got to go down and see her for all of 20 minutes before they said they were going to try to do her lines again because she was so chunky. She was a hard stick. They were having trouble getting the lines in because she was such a chunky girl.
Aw.
But we love chunky babies.
We love chunky babies.
How much did she weigh again?
8 pounds, 15 ounces.
That's a good sized little girl.
Yeah.
Aw.
And she just came right out.
She did, yeah.
That's great. That's great.
That is awesome. Were you able to breastfeed at all? Or did you try?
I was able to latch her there in the delivery room, but with the cyanotic heart defect, because there's not high oxygen saturation generally, they won't have great perfusion to their other organs.
What does that mean?
That means there's not enough oxygen getting to other organs. It focuses in the oxygen toward the brain and the heart and
The vital organs.
structures, yeah. So the stomach doesn't have the same strength that it would in a baby without this type of defect.
Okay.
So it put her at higher risk for something called necrotizing enterocolitis, or NEC. And any NICU parents that might be listening are probably familiar with that term. It's really a dangerous diagnosis if you get that. It's where the intestines start to die. So definitely wanted to avoid that. And in order to do so, they use something called TPN. So it's IV nutrition. It's everything that they need goes through an IV in their arm or through umbilical lines.
And how long did she have to be fed that way for?
Until her surgery.
Okay.
But one of the reasons that I picked Shands was because they had an aggressive feeding protocol, and they try to get babies to take milk by mouth before their surgery, even if it's just little amounts. So it's like 5 mLs, then 10 mLs. It leads to better neurodevelopmental outcomes, better surgical outcomes. So it's one of the reasons that I chose Shands. That was one of the benefits to finding out as early as I did, is I got to do some field trips and talk to a bunch of different centers, because Shands was not the closest hospital that could do this. We could have gone to All Children's, We could have gone to Joe DiMaggio. We could have gone to Nicholas Children's, but none of them gave me as good of vibes as Shands did.
Yeah, fun fact, I was born in the same hospital, but back then it was called Alachua General. But I have family up there, so I'm familiar with that area.
It's a nice area. Lots of parks.
Yeah, there's lots of trees up there. That's
Yes.
a big difference in that northern Florida vibe. It's like got that rural feel, even though that area is technically city, but it's just they will literally like build, I don't know how they do it, but it's almost like they build within the trees. So the trees still grow around the homes, and it's like these houses are set back. It looks like they're in a forest. It's so pretty. It's just all like oaks and Spanish moss and like big like fields, and
It's got that Georgia feel.
it's
so close.
It's so nice. And when the weather actually does get cool up there, it's beautiful. It's just gorgeous. It's like a whole nother world. It's nothing compared to down here. Anyways,
Yeah.
sidebar.
Sidebar.
She comes out into this world pink and chubby and happy, and you get your time with her, and she's unfortunately had to be taken from you, and you finally get her to her again. You get that 20 minutes, and then what happens?
And then they had to try to place lines in her again because she was a chunky mama and they were having trouble. So they had another doctor come and try it again. And then it was the next morning when I saw her again because they told me to come back in 2 hours. After that point, I got wheeled over there and they said, oh, now's not a good time. They're still trying to place the lines.
So quickly, placing lines is just IVs?
I think they were placing a peripheral inserted central catheter, so a PICC line, an ART line, and then they had a umbilical venous catheter and an umbilical arterial catheter.
So there are basically four different needles that were in her to do different things.
Monitor her in
And
every
then
aspect.
And then she had a scalp IV.
My son had one of those. He was a NICU baby, my oldest. Yeah, I remember. I'll never forget coming in that morning and not being warned that he had an IV out of his head.
Yeah.
I was like, that's really nice to a brand new first time mom. Thanks for that. Poor child. I mean, I understand why.
Yeah.
It makes the reasoning makes sense, but then when you first see it, you're like, what? Why is there a needle sticking out of my newborn's head?
Yeah. I work in an environment where I'm used to seeing a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
But
when it's your own child, I'm sure it's very different.
And then it's a pretty big difference, too, between like a NICU and a cardiovascular intensive care unit.
Okay.
It's like a whole new level, really, because I'm used to seeing the ventilators. I'm used to seeing the nitric machines. I'm used to seeing all the lines. And, sometimes you'll have drains and tubes and other things. And again, I'm not a clinician. I don't work in a clinical role, but I'm still in the environment. The cardiac intensive care unit is a whole new deal. So the first week of life, it seemed pretty normal. She had the lines with the ART line. They're able to really, really accurately measure her blood pressures, which is really important. And she was getting the TPN through her umbilical lines. She was getting antibiotics through her peripheral IV. And then, she had the leads on to watch her heart rhythms. Then the morning of her surgery, they told me to be there at 6 a.m. I wasn't able to sleep in overnight with her because I had my toddler with me, and that's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
But I came in early that morning, and they had her kind of propped with her head back, like a towel underneath her shoulders, and they said that her lung had collapsed overnight. And she was breathing really fast. She just seemed agitated. She was crying more, but she didn't have anything on her. She was just naked baby because they were going to place new lines and everything when they got to the operating room. And I was able to walk down with her and her nurses to the OR. Was able to talk to the anesthesiologist. They had 2 anesthesiologists and to walk her into the OR. I remember taking a picture of her right before they walked her back, and it looked like she was smiling, like she was saying, "It's going to be okay, Mama." That's what it felt like. But then we couldn't wait in her room because they said while she was in surgery, her nurses would be transforming her room for post-op. They wouldn't even take her to the PACU. They would do the post-anesthesia care in her room.
Okay.
And she was in the cardiac intensive care unit at this point. She wasn't in the shared bay NICU anymore. There was a little waiting room that we were told to wait in that was right outside the cardiovascular intensive care unit, the CICU. And we would be able to see her roll by when she came out of surgery. And they warned me beforehand, but, they rolled her by, and she had drains, she had wires, her chest was still open. She was intubated. She had a bunch of machines, a bunch of drips. When we were allowed to, about 2 hours after we saw her rolled by, and could actually really see how she looked. They said that the surgery went great. They, didn't have any issues. The conduit that they placed was perfect. With truncus, they have to separate the aorta and the pulmonary artery. They have to put a patch in between the ventricles because there's a large ventricular septal defect, or hole in the heart. And then they place a conduit between the right ventricle and the pulmonary arteries, which allows her heart to function like it has normal anatomy. They said that the repair went great. The conduit was a perfect fit. It should last her 2 to 5 years before we have to go in for a second open heart surgery. But we walked in and could see her. She was intubated. She had femoral lines, catheters in 2 legs. She was not covered by a blanket anymore. She was restrained with her wrist kind of out in like a crucifix position.
It's got to be hard to see that.
It was. She was really puffy, too. She had a lot of edema, a lot of fluid buildup under her skin, like on the sides of her chest. And her little face was all puffy. And she had a PICC line in one arm, an ART line in another. She had lines in her legs. She had pacing wires, which are like an external pacemaker that could shock her heart when she needed it. She had a bunch of machines stacked. They called it the power of tower. They had a bunch of medications, things that were going to stabilize her blood pressure and her heart rate, things that were going to help get that fluid off of her, so diuretics.
And what do they give an infant that small for pain?
Fentanyl, Versed. She was on Precedex. And we found out that my kids take more anesthesia than usual to keep them asleep. Through this experience, the second that they just barely weaned her Precedex, she kind of fully woke up, which was hard. They wanted her to start moving around to get the fluid off, but she had a pain crisis where she fully woke up. Her chest was still open, but she started to try to scream over the breathing tube. Sorry, trigger warning, I guess. She started to gurgle, and she had the breathing tube with oxygen and with nitric to help with pulmonary hypertension. And she turned dark purple, and she pulled the restraints and pulled the sheets off of the sides of the bed, and you could see her ribs kind of flaring because they were.
Gosh,
She
how
was
long?
in so much pain.
How long did her chest have to be open like that?
About 48 hours after surgery.
Oh my gosh, why?
Because there's so much swelling, and they actually have better post-op outcomes if they wait until that swelling goes down, because it doesn't put pressure on the heart.
Okay.
Wow.
But her waking up in the middle of surgery, essentially.
That is so intense.
Or was it the middle of surgery, or was it just the after surgery and they were...
No, this was over 24 hours after her surgery.
Okay,
so they wanted her to start kind of like waking up and wiggling.
Right.
But they didn't expect her to be like eyes open, like
Gotcha.
conscious, kind of.
Right.
And they took morphine and Versed and more Precedex to put her back to sleep. And they had to give her additional rescue doses because it took quite a bit. But that was not fun. And then in the cardiac ICU, you have all the monitors, and it starts going crazy and making all of the scary noises. So you hear her heart rate increase, and then things start dinging, and that was not fun. You feel so helpless as the parent in that situation too. Even before her surgery, again, she was a hard stick. They had to get like an ultrasound to come in and help them put in a new IV when her umbilical line was done, because that only lasts for a little bit, really. They had an occupational therapist who was wonderful, came in, was trying to help with just like comfort and containment. She told me, or she showed me where to put my hands and hold her to try to comfort her. And she said, talk to her. And when I started talking to her and telling her I was there, Astrid looked toward me and like stopped crying, even though she was getting poked a bunch of times and was in pain. So I tried to do that then too, but of course when you're in that much pain, I mean, even mom's voice isn't going to help.
Yeah.
But I kept trying, and you know, I'm breaking down, and
I bet. Man.
And she's not covered, right? She's completely, you could see everything, right?
I mean, it looked like gauze when they leave you open after surgery to let swelling go down, or for whatever reason. They cover you with something called Gore-Tex. It's kind of like cling wrap, but sterile and stronger. And then they put gauze over the top of it, so you couldn't like see her heart beating in her chest.
Okay.
But you just knew she's so fragile, and her
yeah.
chest is wide open.
And you could kind of see like her heart beating
Wow.
underneath. And
Yeah.
then, it kind of was a little bit concave, so you could see like where the borders were.
That couldn't have been good for her heart. That stress of waking up in that much pain. Yeah.
It made her heart rate go up really high, but you know, they had the pacing wires, which I don't know how many times they fired. I don't know if they keep track of that or not.
So the pacing wires would keep your heart either beat faster as necessary or beat slower if it was going too fast.
It can automatically shock if it has a shockable rhythm, kind of like an AED. The electrodes, instead of being on the chest on pads, are directly on top of the surface of the heart.
So how long were you guys at Shands?
About a month.
And slowly, you know, as she started to heal, like, why don't you kind of walk us through the process of, you know, her recovering from the surgery and then closing her up and how all that went?
Those first 48 hours were definitely the most intense. After that, they closed her and they put a wound vac on top to help it heal really nicely, which it did. It worked really well. You can barely see her scar now. So they closed her, and then a few days later, they removed her chest tube. 48 hours or so after they were able to close her chest, they were able to take the breathing tube out. And she just had a high-flow nasal cannula. They were doing breathing treatments for a little bit, just to help get fluid off the lungs. After that, it was just weaning respiratory support gradually and learning how to eat. So since she was able to practice that a little bit before her surgery, she took on to that pretty quickly, pretty well. She did have nasal feeding tube for a little bit, and they talked about if she wasn't going up on her feeds, like if she wasn't taking more gradually, like if she kind of plateaued, then we would discuss sending her home with a G-tube. And it's like she heard that conversation and she pulled the NG tube out that night and started taking 100% of her bottles by mouth.
That's
right
great.
then. She said, nope, no more surgeries.
Yep. My daughter had a G-tube for about 3 months, but we only had to use it for maybe 10 days.
Nice.
Yeah. She was like just started eating by mouth out of nowhere. So
it's like they listen. And
I wish we would have waited for the, you know, we wouldn't have had to have that whole surgery or anything, but, you know, keeping the NG tube in for too long is not good. So
yeah.
I understood that too.
My brother had a G-tube too, because one of the ones that has CF had a G-tube for a while, just because with CF, the GI issues can cause pretty severe malnutrition. We just had to get extra calories into him.
Right. That was the one thing that was the benefit of having the G-tube, because even though she only needed it for 10 days, we had to wait 3 months to get it taken out for the stoma to heal and whatever. So I was able to pump her full of everything I wanted. It was great. You know, beet juice, cod liver oil, all these horrible tasting things. I just pumping right through that G-tube. It was great.
I told my mom that she should make like a G-tube cookbook, because she was able to get pounds onto my brother even though he was so skinny. Because she would put peanut butter and like pureed meats and whatever she needed to, all the
good fats and proteins,
all of it, all the vitamins and minerals he needed into his G-tube.
I know.
Stuff that you can never get him to take by mouth.
You know, there was a silver lining to it for sure.
Yeah. So how did she do when she's healed and she starts eating? Like, you just see her like skyrocket? Like, did she just like take off like a normal baby and develop the way she was supposed to develop?
Yeah. It's impressive how quick cardiac kids heal. I've made friends with other moms whose babies had to have open heart surgery now, and they bounce back so quickly. And I think kids are more resilient. I don't know. I think kids are tougher than adults
Yeah,
because
they
kids heal faster than adults. They bounce back faster, just more tenacious, I guess.
Yeah,
But
that's
she
true.
sounds like she's going to be a little spitfire.
Yeah.
From what I've heard. She'll keep you on your toes, that's for sure.
Yes, for
Now, you
sure.
said that from what they fitted her with, she'll last her about, you said 2 to 5 years. So what does her future look like as far as surgeries go?
We'll go back to Shands again for her next surgery. Hopefully we won't need any sort of procedures in between that time.
Does she go back for, do you do any kind of like monitoring? Does she have to have routine appointments?
Yeah, we see cardiology locally.
Mm-hmm.
And she has echoes and chest x-rays every so often to make sure everything's functioning well. They'll watch for narrowing of that conduit. If it were to have narrowing, she would have to go to a cath lab to have like a stent put in, or she would just have to have the open heart surgery to replace it. But
When would you
eventually
know?
she'll outgrow the conduit, and that's when it'll need to be replaced.
And when are you going to know that she's outgrown the conduit? Because it's just like x-rays to see, okay, this is too small now and it's not functioning properly.
It's the echoes, I believe.
Okay.
So just ultrasounds of the heart, and that'll tell us.
Okay.
And is she meeting all of her milestones and stuff? Is she doing good?
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell us about her now.
We go to OT and PT, and they tell us she's doing great.
Yeah.
So she's started solid foods now. She's the happiest baby ever. She sleeps through the night. She eats well, sleeps well. She's always smiling, very vocal.
Aw.
She's figuring out that she can get all over the house just by barrel rolling. So we're in that stage now.
Aw.
And you mentioned that her brother is on the autism spectrum. And how was that through her healing process for you? Because sometimes, I guess I'm asking it as, did he know how to be gentle with her?
No.
Okay.
No, he didn't.
Well, most brothers in general don't know how to be gentle. So I was just curious if that was difficult.
Yeah, that kind of complicated the whole journey. Also, I was alone with him in Gainesville for a lot of the time. So my mom, my sister, and my husband came up for that first week that we were all there. Even I couldn't be alone in Ronald McDonald House at that point, because if I was to go into labor,
Right.
they would want me to have somebody there to get me to the hospital. After she was born, I think she was born on a Tuesday, and they were there through that Sunday. And then it was just me and my son that were up there, and that was challenging, but right place, right time kind of thing. My son goes to a wonderful ABA center here in our area, and they have 2 locations in the state of Florida. One is here, one is down the street from Shands Hospital.
Nice.
And they were so gracious to accommodate him up there. So during the week, I would wake up in the Ronald McDonald House with my son, get him ready, get him breakfast and lunch pack, take him to the ABA center there. Then I would go up to the hospital and spend the day there with Astrid. I'd leave and go pick him up, have dinner, go to bed, do the whole thing over the next day.
That's great that they had that.
Yeah. And did this whole journey of yours affect, I mean, obviously it had to affect your ability to work. And what did the financial aspects of all of this, what was that effect on your family?
We are still financially recovering today.
Oh, I'm sure. It's only been seven months, right?
Yeah. My husband stayed behind to work to make sure that bills were getting paid. So my employer offers really good insurance, and they have nurse case managers that ended up playing a really large role. I had a nurse case manager through our insurance that called me just to check up on me and would like talk to me, and she was wonderful.
Oh, were you working as your current position as the clinical data specialist? Were you
Yes.
doing that prior?
Yes.
And then you're still doing that now?
Yes.
Oh wow, you were able to keep your job. That's a lot of people can't. A lot of people don't.
Yes,
When
they
they go through something medical like this.
super accommodating. They even let me do a little bit of work remotely as I was able to. Ended up being harder to do so than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
Never realized how hands-on busy hospital admissions can be.
Yeah. So I think you had mentioned in our pre-interview that everything kind of lined up for you in the position that you're in to just have the resources and the help and the people to kind of explain things to you. Is that right? Or am I mistaken?
Yeah. So I guess we can back up to 2019, quite a bit of ways before any of this happened. I had just gotten married when my sister got into a horrible motorcycle accident. She was a trauma alert. They took her to our local trauma center. I was working a random gate security job in Naples at the time and would go and see her every day after work while she was admitted to the hospital and then in rehab. You know, going in and out of a hospital every day, you just start to make connections and small relationships with people that are there. And I ended up connecting with some of the security staff at that hospital, which connected me with a job at another one. And that was December 2019 when I started at another hospital in our area right before COVID happened. We ended up playing a pretty active role in all of that because visitation changed a lot. And there were lots of feelings from staff, from visitors, from patients. Patients weren't able to have their families in there to advocate for them anymore. The security staff in the hospitals, at least in our area, attend every emergency call that happens in the hospital, whether that's somebody being violent, whether that's like a fire alarm pulled, code blues. So when COVID started happening, we started seeing a lot more pretty intense code blues. And it went from just being this scary kind of mysterious thing. We had under 10 patients in the whole system in the beginning, and then it quickly exploded from there. So we also were the staff responsible for transporting dead bodies to the morgue when patients passed away.
That's an interesting tag along to your job title of security.
Yes.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So a lot of times be there when someone would come into the ER. We would be there when they were a code blue in the ICU. And then we would be there as the last people to transport them before the funeral home came and picked them up.
Wow.
So it was really an interesting background position. I wasn't playing the active role in the code blues, but, you know, we were there.
Yeah.
I think we probably saw, 50 to 80 deaths in a month prior to COVID. The month before I delivered my son, we saw over 500.
So you were no longer security at that point. You were just corpse transport.
Pretty much.
Jeez.
Yeah.
And you're pregnant too. Yikes.
Yes. So, as I got further in my pregnancy with my son, I took more of a desk role dispatching. But that was a weird time. And I don't think I processed any of that while I was going through it. And one of my brothers died when I was in the first trimester.
Oh, my goodness.
Sorry. A bunch of tangents, just like trauma dumping over here. Sorry.
That's what we're here for.
So COVID started. I found out I was pregnant with my son. We were very excited. I called my brother. Close friends and family. Being an anxious person, I didn't announce to the whole world until I was through the first trimester when that chance of pregnancy loss does decrease. And I remember calling my brother, and he was like, "Oh my gosh, I was just telling my friends that I would be a cool uncle.
That's cool.
I would be the fun one." He's like, "What do you think it is, a girl or boy?" I said, "Well, right now I'm getting girl vibes." And he said, "No, I put money on it being a boy." And it was 2 or 3 weeks later when my best friend back home called late. She's a cop, so when she called twice, I was like, ugh.
Oh, no.
And I picked up the phone, and she said, "There is no easy way to say this, so I'm just going to come out and say it. Max is dead."
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
What happened?
He and my other brother were cleaning guns to go to the gun range, and our younger brother accidentally fired a gun.
Oh, my
and it hit him in the
gosh.
chest.
Oh,
Well,
how's your younger brother? Oh, my God.
He's surviving.
poor kid.
To have to live
Traumatized.
with that, it was an accident. Ugh.
And the cops were assholes. They
I'm
threw him in
sure.
the back and
Oh, my
he's-
God. Trauma on top of trauma.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. Your poor brother. Both
said-
of your brothers, but
he said they didn't let him grab shoes, so they took him to the jail without shoes. And the cop that picked him up was sitting there talking to his wife on the phone, calling him these stupid kids, and
How old was your brother that died?
21.
Oh, my
I'm
God.
so sorry.
And my
how
brother,
old was your younger brother?
18.
Oh, his life is ruined. I hope not, but man,
Yeah, that is really heavy.
that's so heartbreaking for both of them.
Yeah, and it's been really, I think when an accident happens and it's a loved one that accidentally takes the life of a loved one, it's some complex feelings with it.
Yeah, of course.
We love him, and it was an accident. We're not angry with him or anything.
It was an accident.
He ended up getting charged with manslaughter and 5 years probation, so he didn't have to serve any time, which is
that's good.
Fortunate.
How did your parents handle this?
I think as well as they could have, but my mom is devastated. I mean, can't imagine losing a baby. I mean, even though he was 21, he's still her baby.
No, it's still her kid.
And
shoot, my brother's 23. He's my baby brother.
Yeah. And I think the shock of how it happened, too, was more of a gut punch than it actually happening, because my brother rode motorcycles and stuff, and my friend was a traffic cop, so I kind of expected her to say that he or my dad had been in a traffic accident. I don't know.
Right.
I had that kind of feeling.
Right.
But, yeah, so that was a shock.
Oh, man.
Wow.
But,
and that was right when you found out you were pregnant, or within the second trimester?
That was the first trimester
Okay.
still. So I was about 12 weeks pregnant then,
Ugh.
I think.
And that was with your first, right?
Yeah, with my first. And then we drove out to Oklahoma for his funeral, and, then drove back. And then I went right back to work, continued working through the COVID stuff. And I think it was just so go for such a long time that I never really processed it. So I came right back to work and continued, and it was, COVID land. And I worked right up to delivery with my son. And I worked often 6 days a week because we had one of our team members died. A bunch of others quit because they got scared. Don't blame them. I was trying to go to college at the same time. Didn't do great in that.
Well, when you're rolling bodies through the hospital, $500 a month, I think, if you're any normal person, I would be kind of freaked out as a security guard.
Yeah. And I didn't feel it. I didn't feel any of it. It became the new normal.
Yeah.
I was kind of, I hate to say numb to it, because it had its moments that were rough, but they didn't feel rough for very long. It would be like a few minutes, and then you just kept going.
Yeah, because there's another person you have to transport.
Yes.
When they're that quick, that many, that's a lot of bodies. That's a lot.
A lot of people. That Delta wave that happened in like August of 2021 was intense. I think that was worse than the initial COVID.
Well, a lot of it too was also just bad management of patient care too.
Yeah.
A lot of people were getting put on ventilators that shouldn't have been put on ventilators, and it's what's like over 80-something% chance that you're not going to come off of a ventilator once you're on.
Yeah,
I don't think they knew that at first.
There
I
was
think
so much that they were
were
trying to figure out. They were just throwing, it's like they're throwing spaghetti at a wall and seeing what would stick. And so many people lost their lives because of it, and then lost their lives without being able to say goodbye to loved ones. And it was just a crazy, crazy time that I'm so glad is way past. We're way past that now. But yeah, to be in your position, to have to see that, and being pregnant and your hormones are all over the place. I mean,
and then
what
dealing
happened
with the loss at the same time,
and dealing with the family loss? Like, what happened? Did you process it, and how did you process it at some point?
Well, I did process it when I was on maternity leave.
Okay.
And I actually found out soon after I delivered my son that there was a study that linked the use of Pitocin as augmentation for labor with a 33% higher risk of developing postpartum mood disorders, such as postpartum anxiety, depression, or psychosis.
Really?
If you have history of a mood disorder, such as anxiety, which I've dealt with as long as I can remember. So it was almost immediate after my son's birth. Soon as I closed my eyes, it felt like rapid fire nightmares. And it was just these insane, intrusive thoughts of like bad things happening. Like I called my mom when she was home and asked her to send me a picture of my cat because she was watching my cat while I was in the hospital because I was afraid that she got it. I was like, my brain convinced me that she had been mauled by a dog. Not
Might have had that
logical.
dream and then thought it was real. Have you ever done that? Really? Though woke up. Have you ever woke up and you're like legit thinking that something you dreamed was real?
Yeah.
So I bet that's what happened.
And it was just intense. And I dealt with this intense, soul-crushing, crippling anxiety that if I stepped away from my son or if I let somebody else touch my son, he would die. If I took him out of our room, he would die. So I literally holed us up in a room for like the first month. Didn't want to go anywhere. I went contagion crazy. I was scared of COVID. I was scared of RSV. I was scared of anything happening. He got the sniffles after a well visit to the pediatrician, and I lost my mind about it. I stayed up for like 3 days watching him breathe.
Oh my gosh.
So that followed me for a while. And even with everything going on, I didn't have that intensity of anxiety after my daughter, which was
How did you get
interesting.
through that anxiety with your son? Did you go on any kind of medication?
I was so scared to ask for help because I was afraid that if I talked about my anxiety with anybody, then DCFS would come and take my kid.
Sure.
So when he was about a year old, I finally got into therapy.
Okay.
And how's that going? Are you still going?
I am, and my therapist is awesome, and she's been a godsend through all of it. I knew the struggles that I had after my son, so I got into it before I got my daughter's diagnosis, so she's walked this journey with me.
Wow.
That's awesome.
And has been a huge support. So
Yeah, I love my therapist too.
I don't
That's
have
cool.
one, but I probably need one.
Yeah.
I feel like everybody should get a therapist. It's been a
think it
life-changing thing.
It really does. And I think it took me time to like get to know her, and our therapy is more conversational. It's not just like, I'm here with a problem and you need to help me. We just talk about whatever.
Yeah.
And I learned so much. You know, if I think back, I'm like, I'm accumulating all of these tactics and without realizing it in the moment. It's more just like, we're just talking about whatever, politics, whatever.
It's been a topic of a discussion this
It has.
last week, too.
Yes, it has.
Yeah. And we decided that we're not going to talk about politics on the podcast.
No, that's what the therapist is for.
Yes. Yeah.
We talk about it with each other privately, but
Yeah, I mean, I think
not on
that's
the podcast.
I think that's, smart.
I feel like there's a place for everything.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So how's the whole family doing now?
We're doing
How's
good.
your husband?
He's doing good. He's a trooper. He's making it through it. He's really stepped up to help with, the whole transition of helping our son learn how to have gentle hands.
Yeah.
And just balancing therapies for my daughter because she's in OT and PT, balancing therapies for my son because he's in speech therapy and an ABA.
So he's verbal?
Starting to be, yeah.
Oh,
He's
good.
so smart. He's finding his voice now. It's awesome.
Yeah, speech therapy is fantastic. My daughter was in all three of those therapies, and they do such great work. And I didn't realize that speech therapy was more than just talking,
Yeah.
like teaching you how to talk. Or, when they told me that she had to go to speech therapy, I'm like, but she talks. It wasn't all about that, It's just different strategies, memory strategies, and all these different things that I didn't realize that they focused on.
And he's so smart, too. Like, he knows all of the planets. You can show him a picture, and he'll say, like, Neptune.
Oh, cute.
Yeah,
Aw.
so awesome.
3's a good age.
It is. It's fun.
How does his autism show up in his life?
So we do have the speech delay, and then regulating emotions is a challenge for him. Like, he'll get overwhelmed with certain things. Like, the baby crying is a big one. It upsets him. That's one we're working on right now.
Mm-hmm.
He did really well in the hospital, surprisingly. We were prepared for it to be more of a struggle than it was, but they put us in a room that had kind of a cozy corner.
Mm-hmm.
And that worked out well. But he had some physical aggression for a while. He didn't play very nice with other kids, but he does now.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the emotional regulation through challenging moments, but
Yeah.
he's doing good.
He's also 3 too, so I bet as he ages, he'll probably kind of mellow out in that way, I guess.
Yeah. 3 is tough anyways, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah,
2
3
and
is.
3 is tough. I think that, and also he's a boy, and I think it takes men about 30 years to start emotionally regulating.
At least.
Yeah.
At least. Exactly. So He's got an uphill climb with his emotional regulation, but
Yeah. Oh, and I haven't talked about some people who played a really
that's
huge role.
That's what I was trying to get at earlier, but I couldn't remember the words that you were using.
My sister's accident led me to the job at one of the hospitals, and then my anxiety caused me to not be able to bring myself to go back to work in that full-time overnight position and leave my son overnight with anybody else, which led me to a position in the NICU way before my daughter was even a flicker in our eye. And the people that I work with in the NICU played such a huge role in supporting me through education, through emotional support, and through guidance, through just their knowledge of the different places in the state of Florida that we could get the care that she needed.
Mm-hmm. That's
And
awesome.
The doctors, the nurses, everyone just made me feel comfortable and supported me and made me feel confident that I was actually going to be able to bring Astrid home.
And your role here also probably prepared you just with medical terminology. I mean, you dropped some medical terminology bombs on us today that I'm like, I'll have to look that one up later. I'll look that one up later. To just get more of a deep dive on them.
Yeah, and you explain the process so well.
Yeah. I feel like, like when you said you're not in a clinical role, you could have fooled me.
It's like adjacent to.
Right.
Adjacent to. But they played such a massive role in helping me through this entire thing. So I feel like those events that led me to the job that I'm in right now, to be around the people that I was around, and my son's autism diagnosis, putting him in this wonderful ABA center that helped us through our time in Gainesville. I don't know how I would have survived any of that without any of those elements.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's great. Right place, right time.
Yeah.
But it was the tragedy of your sister's accident that kind of snowballed everything.
Yeah. And
That's
she
crazy.
is, because there was a surgeon rotating in our area, right place, right time, that was a specialist for the particular type of injury that she got. Things happen the way they do for a reason, I think.
How's your sister now?
She's doing well. She's fully ambulatory. She deals with pain, but,
Yeah.
she can walk, run, do everything.
Did she break anything?
Yeah, she broke her back, and she had a really nasty open book pelvic fracture.
Ouch.
So it broke open in the front, and then it separated from both sides of her spine.
Oh my God.
So that could have very, very, very easily been a fatal injury.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Wow.
And she was touch and go for a little bit.
And you said she's running now?
She can run. She
I know, but
doesn't choose to, but yeah.
Just wow.
And she can jump on trampolines, and
Wow.
she's gone horseback riding, and
Wow, that's amazing.
so
That's
lots of
fantastic.
miracles. Lots of bad things have happened, but gosh, how many blessings have happened along the
Yeah.
way.
I've noticed that, like, in our suffering, there's so many blessings that come out of situations like this.
And I feel like those are too many coincidences in
Yeah.
a row for
Yeah.
it to all be random.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I don't want to interrupt, but like, that's a God thing.
It has to be.
It has to
right?
be. Mm-hmm.
It's like the people that I've met along the way, the voices that have guided me on this journey.
And you were able to advocate for your daughter,
Yeah.
and knowing everything that you were exposed to, and you know how the system operates, you know how these people talk,
Yeah.
you know the terminology.
And I knew the questions to ask.
Right.
So I didn't go to the hospital that we probably would have just been automatically sent to, because I knew the questions to ask.
Yeah.
It ended
That's
up at the right
amazing.
place, and they took wonderful care of her. And the surgeon there had the best bedside manner I've ever seen. So,
That's fantastic. That's always a bonus.
yes.
Because can we just stop for a second and appreciate medicine? The fact that somebody is so skilled that they can go and do open heart surgery on a heart the size of a walnut.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah. I mean, I'm very much anti-pharma.
Yeah, no,
I'm not a big, huge fan of Western medicine, but I also know there is a place and a time, and the things that they can do are just miraculous. It's
fantastic.
incredible. Like, I'm not, I'm not that obtuse.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I can absolutely appreciate life-saving medicine, life-saving surgeries, and something as delicate as open heart surgery on an infant is just
That's
it's
phenomenal.
wonderful.
That's like one of the coolest things. Like, what gets somebody into that job?
I actually
A lot
was
of
listening.
brains.
I was very. This is
Yeah.
very fascinating to me because my husband is a gamer. It seems like off topic, but I promise it's not. He's into video games. He's not nearly as bad as he used to be, and my boys are both really into playing video games. But there was a podcast I actually think it was Joe Rogan with Elon Musk, and they were talking about how surgeons that play video games perform like, I think it was like 26 to like 30 something % better because of their like hand dexterity.
I believe that.
And I was like, there is something positive to these nerds. Like, but yeah, they had this real deep discussion about like these different video games. And we're talking about this study, and they're like, why would they not make surgeons like take a course and make them play video games if it's proven that it's actually going to make them 30% better?
Right.
Make them play.
Right.
And I was like, that's a really
Probably
interesting.
training the muscles and the dexterity.
Yeah,
in
that's
their
a
hands.
really interesting take. I know I could never. I can't even use like a regular Xbox controller that involves a game where you have to like back up. I remember years ago when my husband was really into playing Halo when we were dating, and I was like, like if you can't beat him, join him. All right, fine, I'll try. And I was standing there, stuck in a corner the whole time. I couldn't do anything.
I was at the apartment during this because I too was stuck in the corner and I couldn't get out.
I couldn't do anything. I'm like,
I know,
well,
this is it.
I can't be a surgeon. That's out.
My husband and I used to play Halo together. Actually, when
really?
we first started dating, it's so funny. But I would just kind of like spray and pray. Like,
I can't do nothing. My kids make fun of me. I'm like, listen, I will whoop your ass at some Mario Kart. Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's. I can play some Mario Wonder, some Sonic, but that's like the
Donkey Kong.
That's the extent of it.
Yeah. I used to be really good at Mortal Kombat because I was just like a button
Pounding the
pusher.
buttons.
That's it.
All the combos.
Yeah. It would just happen. I would have zero idea of how I would get the combo.
Yep.
But I'd kick my brother's ass.
Well, I thought of something I wanted to add too, and I'm not really sure where it'll fit in, but something that I thought was important too was with the unmedicated labor.
Mm-hmm.
I remember getting to a point where I both thought and yelled that I couldn't do it anymore.
That's it.
And I had this nurse in the room who like grabbed my face. She said, "Your baby's right there. You don't have a choice. Like you're going to do it. You're doing it now." And she, took my hand to touch my baby's head, and that gave me the strength to push through it. And I feel like that kind of strength that I got from that moment helped me through some of the harder parts of her admission.
Yeah.
And through that whole experience in Gainesville, like the moments that I thought, like, I really can't do this. I like mentally was able to tell myself after that, I'm doing it now.
Yeah.
I can't just stop.
You have no choice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, that's such a beautiful,
I don't know, the way it connected.
Yeah. I love that. And it's always the second you start saying, I can't do this,
You're
baby's
almost
literally
there.
right there.
Yeah.
Yep.
It
Always.
happens every time. I actually watched there was like a reel or something today of a woman who gave birth in the car. And I've seen stuff like it before, but her husband must have had the phone like in the door filming her because she's like going crazy. Oh my God, it hurts so bad. And he's like, honey, do you need to take your pants down? And she's like, he's right there.
I think I've seen this.
And because she, right at the end, you could see her stomach was just doing its thing. And she's like, I can't do this anymore. And it's like a second she said it, and we all do it.
Yep.
We all say it.
So can you get through it?
Yeah.
You don't really have a choice.
No, I mean, your body's going to do it for you. I think that she genuinely was trying to like hold it in, and her belly was just doing the contracting and pushing that baby out.
That fetal ejection reflex.
It is. And then she's, barbaric yelps, and that baby was born right there in her lap. Wow. Well, not in her lap, but, she pulled it right up. It was just, I like teared up. It was such a sweet video.
That baby fever really is getting to you.
I know. My husband said yesterday, maybe we should look into adopting a baby. I'm like, I would love to adopt a baby because I want a baby, but I don't actually want to have another baby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. You know what the thing is? I've come to realize, and my kids are still pretty young, like they're 11, 9, and 7. I can't wait to be a grandma.
I know.
I don't want to put that out in the universe. Like, I do not want my kids to have kids young. I want them to do things, the right way.
I said it yesterday.
But I cannot wait to be a grandma.
Yep.
My mom said it's just different. Like
Yeah.
it's a whole new level of excitement.
Yeah. Well, because you can give them back and you can like just love them. And I'm going to have a really, really hard time with boundaries. I already know that. My kids are probably going to be like, Mom, leave us alone. I'm going to be that mom with all the advice.
Yep.
I know I will, because I feel like even though I had to make it up as I went along as a parent, I'm real good at it. My kids are like genuinely good people. And I feel like I know what I'm doing. Give me the baby and I'll do it myself. I'll raise this child on my own, because you know how I am. I'll do it myself.
Yep.
Just do it myself. So I'm going to have to probably get another second therapist before my kids start having kids. Just start helping me draw boundaries for me. For them.
Oh, goodness gracious. All right. Well, thank you for sharing your story about Astrid. She's a little cutie. We got to see a picture before we got started recording, and she's got beautiful chubby cheeks, and she looks so happy. And I'm so happy for you guys that everything has come to this point and she's doing well. And please continue to update us on her progress in the future. We would love to maybe when the time comes down the road, for if we're still doing this in a few years and she has to have another surgery, you can report back and come and join us again.
And I'll invite everybody to join us at the 2024 Lee County Heart Walk. It's on December 14th at Centennial Park. It starts at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, that's great.
We can walk for people who have dealt with heart disease later in their life, walk for babies that have congenital heart disease. And
I love that.
Yeah,
ending on that plug. That's perfect. Thank you so much, Sarah.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you for listening. You can find us at our brand new website, www.ican'tevenimagine.com, and find us on our socials at Instagram at ICEI_podcast, or on Facebook at I Can't Even Imagine - a podcast for moms. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.